Hi guys. I can see people saying hello. Awesome. So we'll give people a moment to just quickly join the session. We'll kick off in 3 minutes. I hope people have been enjoying our content today and enjoying our new platform, new shiny software. Hello, Paula. It's a bit different having everybody virtual saying hi, not being in the same room. Oh, Andy, somebody's calling out Norwich.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter.
Oh, well, glad the season's over, that's all I'll say.
Okay, so let's kick off. Hello and welcome to the next session in our Summer 2020 Jadu Virtual Academy. I'm Sarah Backhouse, CMS Product Owner, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Andy Green, and the Product Owner of our XFP Forms product, and Paul Stanton, Product Owner for our Pulsar User Interface product. We'll be giving you an update on the recent changes to our content management system and our form system. Now, as we've mentioned in previous sessions, and in common with a lot of our other academies, we're supporting a charity today, and we'd be really chuffed if you would consider supporting that with us. Our chosen charity is Ovarian Cancer Action, and there's a donation link being dropped into our chat window if you feel able to contribute. So, to quickly run through some housekeeping. If you'd like to join the conversation with us, we're using the hashtag Jadu Academy. We'd love to see you on our socials. A recording of this talk is going to be made available after the Academy, so you can share it with colleagues or revisit anything that we've previously mentioned. If you've got any questions during the presentation, feel free to drop these into the chat or the Q&A section, and we'll be picking these up right at the end. So, get things started. We're going to kick off a poll. If you have a look beside, there should be a poll. It says, who here today has Jadu CMS, XFP, or, if you're lucky, both? We've also got a neither option, but surely you've all got one. We'll give that a minute to run, and then I'm going to hand over to Andy to start off our updates. Oh, quite a lot of people have both for the CMS. Response is still coming in. I'm glad everybody's managed to find the poll section. We are going to follow up with the second one at the end of this as well. I think there's been polls being run in each of our sections today, so I'm sure you're going to be old hands. Okay, let's hand over. So, Andy Green, starting with our first update, over to you.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah. So I'm just going to give a quick update on some of the releases that we've done in XFP since the last Academy and what's coming in the future. So the first thing that we've released is support for Bartek version 16. Bartek released a new version of Collective at the end of last year. That introduced some API changes, and until we released, we weren't able to support that version, but we can now. This is in addition to versions 14 and 15 that we've supported now for a number of years. There's no new features from the Jadu side. I'm not too sure if there's some from the Bartek side. I'm sure there are. But from the Jadu integration point of view, it's exactly the same no matter what version you're on. If you're already using Bartek and you want to go to version 16, the upgrade path is you'll need to deploy XFP 6.8 onto your UAT site, contact Bartek and get them to go through the process of updating your UAT Bartek collective instance. They'll then give you some new credentials. The new credentials need to be put into the Jadu integrations page. And it's a bit small on the image, but the very last setting is the API version. You need to make sure that that is set to version 16 to make sure that the correct code is being used. Once you've done that, it's a case of testing all your forms, the Bartek collective instance, full end-to-end test. And once you're happy with it, repeat the process on your production site. From Jadu's point of view, it's a case of just rolling out a normal patch and then putting in those integration details. I'm sure there's bigger projects on the Bartek side of that though. We've also updated an existing Bartek collective logic, which we use to get collection dates for a work pack. Previously, this logic only worked on the number of jobs on the work pack, but over time this became a bit limiting, and there was other values within the work pack that we could use to determine whether or not that date should be shown. So we've added them in. You can now do or use the premises, so the number of properties that the booking would or the collection team has to visit, and also the volume and the weight within a work pack. And you can use combinations of these. So only one of the 4 options has to be set, but you can set more than one, and it will work based on the settings that have been set. Again, this is available from XFP 6.8. So this would allow you to kind of set up the logic such that there's a maximum number of premises and a maximum number of items, and when either of them has been exceeded, that date or that work pack would no longer be available for a customer to book. We've also updated our blue badge integration, adding in the additional fields that the Department for Transport added to their API. These are for hidden disabilities and walking disabilities. So things such as anxiety and maybe balance, those fields are now pulled in to the blue badge application logic and available for you to select when integrating with the blue badge integration. With CXM, we've kind of made sort of under the hood improvements to our integration with CXM, more around to do with performance. So the first thing that we've improved is the load time of the CXM value case field logic. This is the logic where you can grab a value of a case and use it within your form. Previously, we loaded every single field that was possible from CXM. We've now introduced a live search option so that you can search based on the field name or the field identifier. This improves performance. The page loads a lot quicker. Hopefully, those of you who already have access to this have noticed a difference with that. We've also improved the performance when transitioning a case from a form. There was a number of calls that we were making to CXM that we didn't need to make, so we've kind of reduced that down, and the performance has improved because of that. And finally, the last update that we made to the CXM integration is the view your case in CXM link. Sometimes that would show when you didn't necessarily want it to show. An example of that is where a case is raised for or by a user, but that user doesn't actually have access to the case. The link would show, and that if they clicked it, they went to CXM, but were told they didn't have access to that case. We've changed that so that we now check to see if the particular user has permission on the case to access it, and only show the link if they do. So hopefully you'll see the benefits from them. Something else that we've done in the 6.8 release was we removed Gocardless integration. Back in or earlier in the year, Gocardless introduced a partner technical certification, which set out a minimum requirements to become a partner. Unfortunately, our integration didn't meet all of those requirements, and given the uptake of that particular integration, we've decided that we would remove it. For direct debits, your option now, or only option now, is to use bottom line for direct debits. So what's coming up in our next release? Well, our next release is a big one. It's the 7.0 release, and predominantly the changes are all to do with making the control center accessible. So WCAG 2.1 accessible. Some of the older interfaces have been updated. Those of you who have used XFP for a while will know that there's kind of some of the new Pulsar interfaces in there, and then some of the pages are kind of using the old style, which haven't been updated for years. We've updated some of those interfaces, so which I will go through in a minute. We've also updated Symfony, which is a framework that Jadu uses to build its applications on. So we've updated that. We've also updated jQuery. Now, if you are using snippets within your forms, you're probably going to need to check if they use jQuery, and also if they're compatible with jQuery 3. Most of the stuff that we've done internally hasn't required major changes to support jQuery 3, but we can't check your snippets because they're within your content, and I can provide guidance for that once we're closer to releasing. We've also taken the opportunity to tidy up the file system. So with patches, we would add files and maybe deprecate those files, but the files would be left on the file system. With this release, we're cleaning that up. So only the application files still in use will remain. Also taking the opportunity to standardize some of our database table names. We over the course of the years, we've kind of mixed and matched table names, so it's kind of standardizing it. None of that should really affect you, but it's would only affect you if you're doing an integration or you've got custom code which is expecting a table name to be a certain way. Likewise, we've renamed our namespaces so they are singular. Again, custom developments, if you're using any namespaces, that's something that you'll need to check. So some of the changes will require updates to custom developments, and I'll provide a full list of those changes in due course. We've tried to keep it to a minimum. All the integration points, so integrated components, predefined logics, form actions, they're all remained unchanged, unless, of course, you're kind of doing something a little bit out there in terms of accessing database tables or class files directly. In which case, I will provide all the documentation that you would need to review your custom developments. If Jadu have done your custom developments, we will review them for you ahead of any release. So I mentioned that some of our interfaces have changed. So I've got a few examples here. So we've got database connections on the left, which is just a simple table. You chose your different, or you created your connection, drop-down list allowed you to choose it. On the right is the new one. It's a common pattern across XFP in the CMS of a table and then adding a new item to that table within a modal. So that's been updated to follow that. Likewise, with validation routines, that interface has been given an update following the same pattern of a data table with a modal for creating new ones. And finally, connectors. So exactly the same as the database connections one and the update to it. So when you get 7.0, you'll notice that some of these interfaces will change. The functionality within them is exactly the same. We haven't changed any of the functionality within them. It will just be a slightly different way of setting these up. And that's it from me. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah now.
Thanks, Andy.
No problem.
So hopefully you can all hear me again now that I've unmuted my mic. So the CMS team have been relatively quiet recently, largely because, just as Andy was detailing for XFP, we've been working on our 20.00 release. And the 20.00 release encompasses many really large platform changes, notably accessibility with the WCAG 2.1AA requirements, but also upgrades to some of our key dependencies such as Symfony 3.4 and jQuery 3. Most of these just in common with XFP. If you haven't done any custom devs, you're probably not going to have an awful lot of requirements on yourselves to do much here. You're just going to receive these from us. But if you have created your own interfaces, created your own functionality, not including things like widgets, then the likelihood is you might need to check that these things are going to remain compatible following this upgrade. There's been a number of changes, largely the interface, which we're going to come back to in a moment. But to kick us off with something positive, we've added a new theme to the blogs area of our software. It's provisionally titled Access because I'm not very imaginative. I mean, we're aware that most customers create their own CSS when deploying a blog. However, we felt it was important to have a WCAG 2.1 AA standard compatible theme available, and this is then going to become the default theme for blogs when they're first created. All of the themes are going to remain available. However, due to the techniques used with those, we're not going to be able to move those over to being compliant with the WCAG 2.1 AA standard. There's no action for you with regards to receiving the theme. The theme will become available when you patched. And along with that, we have resolved some of the template requirements as well that have limited people from being able to achieve WCAG 2.1 AA standard within their own themes. Let's move us on. Deployer. So Deployer, if you're not familiar with it, is the tool that we provide in order to apply our regular software updates to your own system without having to go through necessarily our support team in order to apply it for you. And previously, one of the steps that was required was that our team would make some custom integration pages, well, not out of the box, integration pages available in order to configure Deployer to work on your system. As we start trying to make Deployer more available to more people, we are adding these pages into the CMS. So they're going to be available out of the box. There are still going to be further steps required in order to complete setup. And there's still limitations around who's going to be able to use this integration, such as for the moment, I don't believe it's going to be available for customers who use the Windows operating system on their servers. However, we're hoping that this will be something that allows us to offer Deployer in the future to more customers. There's no impact if you're currently using Deployer, and there's no steps for you to get this. This is going to be something that's made available in this patch without you having to do anything else. However, if you want to make it fully functional, get in touch with our support team in order to kick off that process with your server. So sad news next, I apologise, but we are going to be retiring our content packs functionality. Content packs, if you're not familiar with it, is part of the suite of functionality in Galaxy's sites. For a while, it's sadly not been compatible with the way that we deploy changes to the CMS. It's now, for the short term, we're going to remove this functionality within the 20.00 release. It's not going to have any impact on sites that you've already created, but the next time that you come to create a site, those options aren't going to be, available to you. We recognise this is probably come out of the blue for some people. We have a handout available that covers some of the frequently asked questions that we expect available in this session. So if you look at near where the chat is, we've got a handouts link, and our FAQs on content pack requirement is available as a PDF in there. And we're happy to pick up any questions that you have in this session. So drop them in the chat box and we can pick them up right at the end. But probably the most exciting part of our 20.00 work is the user interface changes that we are looking at. So there's been subtle changes really on the vast majority of our pages. It's through from simple things like color contrast changes and improved keyboard accessibility through to making some of those really old interfaces responsive and better able to kind of handle the requirements that we now have in terms of accessibility. There's really been an emphasis on consistency between interfaces. And to give you a deep dive on this, and to better prepare you for what's coming, I'm going to hand over to Paul Stanton, who has kindly created a video to take you through these user interface improvements within Pulsar. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you. Before I start the video, I'll just say that I apologize for not doing this live. It was very Lucas here when I prepared earlier. Because I'm jumping a lot between CMS and XFP, mainly in this, and a lot different versions of the software that are currently in development, I just couldn't do it live. It would have been a disaster. So I've prepared this video, and let's see if I can press the right button. Press that.
An update about our Pulsar design system.
Oh, here we go. Something's happening.
Products and help. An update about our Pulsar design system. This is used by all Jadu products and helps engineers to design responsive, accessible user interfaces for the Jadu platform. It's been a very busy year for the Pulsar team, and we've been working on a large-scale release which dramatically improves the accessibility of both new and existing features. There's far too many changes to cover in a presentation here, so I'm going to provide a whistle-stop tour of some of the more obvious visual changes that you and your colleagues may notice in the near future. So I'm going to start right at the top.
This video is not working for anyone.
Hello there. I'm going to give you an update about our Pulsar design system. This is used by all Jadu products and helps engineers to design responsive, accessible user interfaces for the Jadu platform.
Sorry about this.
It's been a very busy year for the Pulsar team, and we've been working on a large-scale release which dramatically improves the accessibility of both.
It's playing for me now, Paul.
There's far too many changes to cover in a presentation here, so I'm going to provide a whistle-stop tour of some of the more. Hello there. I'm going to give you an update about our Pulsar design system. This is used by all Jadu products and helps engineers to design responsive, accessible user interfaces for the Jadu platform. It's been a very busy year for the Pulsar team, and we've been working on a large-scale release which dramatically improves the accessibility of both new and existing features. There's far too many changes to cover in a presentation here, so I'm going to provide a whistle-stop tour of some of the more obvious visual changes that you and your colleagues may notice in the near future. So I'm going to start right at the top. Over the years, our toolbar has slowly evolved, gaining new features like notifications, the user manuals list, and the ability to switch between control centers in a multi-tenant environment. As minor as it looks, the layout of this has always been one of the most trickiest parts of the interface to make work nicely on a variety of screen sizes and browser options, mainly because we had to support a number of now obsolete Internet Explorer versions until now. The toolbar has been given a major overhaul, taking advantage of our updated browser support so that we can use a more modern responsive layout using CSS Flexbox. We've made the right-hand controls more consistent so the buttons look and act like buttons. And if you're using a small screen device, they adjust their layout to make sure you can still access all the things you need. The footer is also an element present on every page. And in CMS and XFP in particular, there's an often forgotten feature down here which, if you have admin access to this feature, gives you a list of administrators who are currently signed into the software. This lets you see what they've been doing recently, see all of their content, or send them an email. This has been given a major redesign to make it accessible and more visually interesting at the same time. The majority of interfaces in Jadu, especially CMS and XFP, are either list views or form views. We've made extensive improvements to our common list view to improve consistency. You'll notice in the old version, we've got a lot of controls dotted about the page. Things like publishing workflow, visibility, options to preview the page, run the link checker, change the order, and the primary option for creating new pages. We've dramatically simplified these types of list views. Important options moved to the top right, and less important actions made available either through the Actions drop-down or moved inside the Edit view, in this example for our document page. A good example is table filtering, where previously I had the Find a Page or Document link taking up an entire row of vertical space. You now have that within the Filter option in the Actions drop-down. We've also been working on the Edit views. These forms, which you'll be very familiar with, are used when adding or editing things within the software. Now there's two different things we're working on to improve these. The most obvious is the visual refresh. Like list views, we're removing the grey backgrounds to improve contrast. Inputs are larger and easier to tap with a pointing device, but we're also gradually rebuilding these older classic form interfaces to use the more modern technologies that we use for newer features. Form Fields has lots of changes focused around accessibility, both in the upcoming releases and still coming up as part of our continual effort to improve the experience for everyone. Forms are easier to navigate without a mouse, whether that's using a keyboard or voice control. They're easier to see thanks to improved contrast and focus styles. And we're also cutting some features that, while they look pretty, like guidance popovers, just could not provide the level of accessibility we now expect and demand from the software that we craft for you. In a previous release, we changed and improved how focusable elements were highlighted, adding a prominent orange border to things like links, inputs, and buttons. And in this release, we've gone one step further and cranked up the contrast on focus states as much as possible. This follows on from our greater understanding of the WCAG 2.1 guidelines released in June last year. People should now have a better understanding of their place within an interface, especially those people who may have vision issues. For some of the more complex interfaces, especially those where we allow you to build things like homepage layouts or forms, we often allow you to drag and drop elements in various places, but that does present an accessibility issue as it heavily relies on your ability to use a pointing device. Things like being physically able to click and hold that click and accurately drag that thing to where you need it to be. I'm going to show you two of our more complex interfaces, the homepage designer and the form designer. Homepages first. The new settings layout improves this left-hand column, providing more space to display the available widgets, and we're still able to drag and drop these into our homepage. But if we select a widget, either by clicking the mouse or selecting with a keyboard or other assistive technology like voice control, we're presented with new options which let us choose which row we want to send that widget to. No drag and drop required. In the old homepage designer, we also had various controls like being able to define the width of a widget. However, the control like this was placed elsewhere in the page. And if you think about tabbing through the controls, the width control was actually backwards to the tab index. That's fine if you're visually able to see the whole page and understand that this control over here relates to this widget. Otherwise, it's all but invisible. So we've placed related controls together. If you drop a widget into a row and choose to change the width control's right here, as close to the widget as we can get. We manage focus as well for keyboard users. It's small changes like this which dramatically improve the accessibility and usability of features like this. Now the form designer. We had to solve the same problem, but also cater for the complexity of form branching. You are currently able to drag and drop page templates into your form. However, because there's a lot of potential places you can drop this page, we did try and progressively show and hide your options as you moved over the form. But it's prone to jumping about and making your life difficult. Also, like home pages, when we add in the need to perform this action without the mouse, there's no way for us to present a simple drop-down like we did in home pages. There's too many options. So we took this opportunity to give the form designer a bit of a visual and functional overhaul, which you'll see coming in XFP 7. Now we are quite proud of this, and we have a short preview video to share with you. Now broadly, the form designer is the same as the one before, but the updated route diagram makes it easier to track your pages as they branch from each other and merge back together. You can easily follow a specific route all the way to the end. The page templates are still draggable, but can also be added to your form through the Add to Form action, which explodes your form and gives you all the available positions. This makes it really easy to put your new page precisely where you need it. And if you do like to drag and drop, you get an almost identical experience, but with drop targets in place of clickable buttons. And yes, all these colours do meet the accessibility requirements for visual contrast. The interactions properly manage focus and communicate their expanded and collapsed states to assistive technologies. We hope the amount of design and engineering work that's been poured into this interface will make building forms a better experience for everyone. You might have noticed that I've not mentioned CXM yet, and there's a good reason for this. The CXM team have been implementing Pulsar's accessibility changes, which introduce a large number of improvements to, well, almost everything. We've worked on an end-to-end audit of the components Pulsar provides. These are the Lego bricks that product team use to compose interfaces, whether that's the pagination on a table, the error messages for form validation, focus states, modal pop-ups. Almost everything has been placed under the accessibility microscope, and we'll continue to do this as part of our commitment to accessibility. Thank you for listening. I hope this whistle-stop tour provides a small insight into the large-scale improvements coming soon in your Jadu products.
Broken. Oh, I think it's cut off, but we'll follow up with the video afterwards.
Okay. What point did it get to? Because I couldn't see anything.
I got to pretty much the end of it where we're talking about CXM.
Oh. Yeah, apologies for the technical.
Never mind. There's always a way with videos in webinars. So that is the end of the material that we had to present to you in this session. But before we move on to picking up any questions that you've posted, a quick question for you guys, if you head back to the poll section. We're just wondering if we're making our links to our documentation as clear and consistent and as available to you as they could be. So are you confident, guys, that you know where to find our documentation if you needed it? I'll give you a few seconds to put your responses to that. And if you could think of any questions, if you haven't already, please drop them into the Q&A section and we'll be picking up the Q&A next. Okay, so we'll be reflecting on the results of the poll later. Let's move on to our first question. What have we got? Is there an end of life date for Legacy XFP, Andy Green?
That will be for me. No, not at the moment. We're not actively developing for the legacy interfaces, but also at the moment we've got no plans immediately to remove it. When we do finally decide to remove it, we'll give plenty of notice ahead of that, at least a year's notice before that. At the moment, I'd like to see more people take the leap onto the new form builder, or modern form builder, as we've kind of half renamed it, which has been out now for almost 2.5 years. So yeah, I'd like to see a few more customers move on to that before we start looking at a retirement date for legacy form builder.
Great. I have added an answer. This is our first time using this platform, so I think it's dropped into the answered thing, and I'm hoping everybody will be able to see this. Let's try this publish button. Next question from Simon. With regards to the blog WCAG 2.1 AA changes, you mentioned a template change. Will this be the addition of a responsive base template? And the standard blog template we have is not responsive. So the CSS for the themes that we've got at the moment isn't responsive. They were made way back when our browser support was around IE6. The new theme that we have proposed and that we are currently testing and making ready to release, that is responsive, and so that responds down to like a typical kind of like mobile phone, tablet kind of view. There's nothing in the markup that would prevent any other people's blogs themes, any themes that you create yourselves, from being responsive. But the things that we've had to address within the actual HTML of the blog template, those are things that have been pulled up by kind of like common WCAG 2.1 AA kind of checkers around language and some of the choice of tags, such as the small tag. So those have been resolved because you wouldn't have previously been able to resolve those issues. And yes, the new theme is going to be responsive. Will there be an alternative to content packs in the future? So this is one where we haven't at the moment necessarily made a decision on this, and we really want feedback from you guys about how useful you see content packs so that we can prioritize reworking that feature for you guys. It's kind of along the same lines if you previously our content share feature that we previously retired, and then we reworked that and made that better. This is a similar process where, I mean, like, realistically, we couldn't make the current iteration of content packs work and preserve our patching, and our ability to give you guys patches was so important that this is the route, unfortunately, we've had to take. But yeah, let us know if this is something that you want to see come back, and we'll be happy to see that. What else have we got in here? Can you share the video too, please? I believe that is being shared. Is that correct? Is anybody on the call who can answer that?
Yeah, we'll share it after the session, Sarah.
Brilliant. I should be publishing these and answering them, but I can't talk and type. So I'll try again. I'll update these in a minute. So the video. Someone else has asked about ModGov and what they are doing to make their system output more accessible content. We haven't had any discussions with them from a Jadu point of view. I'm not sure if anybody in chat is also using Modern Gov and hasn't had any conversations with them, but feel free to post in there if you have, and we'll be happy to relay that on to the people on this call. What else have we got here? Oh, that's one. Can we now create a row at the top of the page, not just the bottom? Paul, would you like to, that's with respect to the homepage designer. Would you like to jump in on that one?
Yeah, we can certainly look at it. You add the homepage, the rows sequentially, so new rows would be added at the bottom, so that the control is at the bottom. It's kind of where you would expect that control to be, but we could possibly look at adding another one at the top if people want it.
So we've got two questions. Sorry, I can't see who we relayed one of these, so I'm not sure who it's coming from, but we've also got one from William Arthur also asking the same thing around an ETA for the Pulsar UI improvements and the other significant changes that we've put in place here. And we are working on these as quickly as we can. We'll announce a date shortly when those will be available to you, but we don't have a firm date at the moment, other than ASAP, really. Andy, do you have any better date than that?
Not really. I'd just like to mirror what you're saying. It's kind of we're working on them at the moment, and as soon as possible is our target, really.
We're throwing everything we've got at getting these available to you as soon as we can, is the way that goes. Will there be any future improvements or developments to XFP data management? That's come from Graham Young. Hand that over to Andy Green.
I've got nothing planned. Graham, if I think my contact details will be shared after this. So if you just want to drop me an email with what kind of things you're thinking of, I'll happily have a conversation with you about it.
And I apologise if I butcher your name, Hovik Avedian. Are the new changes to Bartek integration available with collective version 15?
I think this must be referring to the future work packs logic. Yes, it is.
Okay, and a second one, will forms built using new form builder benefit from new features in version 7.0, e.g. the new branching interface?
So that branching interface only exists in the new form builder. So, yes.
Okay. Oh, have we got any other questions coming through? Have the content schedule options for document pages been moved to the actions drop down too? Paul, would you like to drop in on that?
Yeah, sorry, can't see that question. Where?
Oh, it's in the bottom of the. I moved into the chat because there's questions in there, so I apologise. I'm not helpful here, am I?
Have the content scheduling options for document pages been moved to the actions drop down to? I honestly can't remember off the top of my head.
I don't believe they have, Alison. I believe these are still within the metadata interface at the moment. But if these are things which are causing issues, you know, we would be interested in any feedback from the group really around the areas where we found problems within your teams. I can see a message from Simon because we did have a question about responsiveness in blogs, where he has been able to add responsive CSS wrapper and wrapper HTML to the current default blog theme. Happy for anyone to have a poke around, and he's put an example link in there. If you take a look in the chat, because I don't think I can post this up on screen at the moment. I've got some praise of the new form builder. Have we got any more questions come through? Oh, yes. Simon, will we ever be at a stage when a row in a homepage can be assigned an ID number or a unique ID, either automatically or via the homepage editor? This would assist with CSS design, as targeting nth-placed rows is subject to the order of the rows not being changed by editors. So the rows themselves, I don't think they have an ID within the system that we could use. You could add an ID in the output of your template, but as you say, they could be moved around by editors. It's something where, again, we'd be really interested in feedback from anybody around how many other people are also suffering with this and what the use case is, because it's something that we haven't necessarily come across before. And I think previously we've had discussions with customers around the possibility of adding classes to rows. So if that's something which would solve the same use case, that'd be a place where it'd be really good to have a chat. Have any changes been made to the list of all news items, which is traditionally organised alphabetically by title? We really need this content type to be arrangeable by date, created or last edited, since news is by nature chronological and can therefore be very hard to work with by title. At the moment, the news list remains ordered by title. We haven't changed those elements. What we're working towards is a sortable table view for all these tables. So our first kind of step on the ladder, the first rung, is moving all these tables to a consistent technology and a consistent way of presenting that information, which is what we've achieved in this release with, as Paul showed, kind of removing some of those controls and making that compatible. There's some stuff that's going on under the hood that's made it a lot easier for us to manage those interfaces. And so the next place that we're going to be looking at is around sortable interfaces. And if we can get there, some better filter options as well. We recognise that this is something that's come up with a number of customers in terms of the need to manage news, and the other one is events, being able to identify events that have expired and gone past their event date. Also news, because news is an item where ceases to be relevant after a number of years, perhaps. So yeah, we'll revisit those, but at the moment in this release, they remain as they were. There are many drop-downs in XFP that are not listed in a logical order, e.g. alphabetical. Any plans to sort this? And I'll hand this over to Andy.
I mean, we tend to sort of review each area of XFP when we go to do an update on it, so that sort of fall under there. If we're updating something with CXM and we notice that they're not in alphabetical order, we would probably update it there. There's no plans to go across the entire of the application and change them all at the moment. No. I think it's mainly the areas where we're pulling information in from a third party, such as the CXM integration, where you'll notice that they aren't in an alphabetical order. One of those areas was the CXM value of field logic, which we've just updated so that it's now searchable rather than displayed all in one list.
That's great. Have I missed any other questions? There are issues around supplements which are being reported in chat. I'll pick this up with you guys outside of this. We have got some bits and pieces that we are working on for this. So I've not missed it. There is a question in the chat which is, will there be a way for HTML autocomplete to be toggled on or off?
I presume that's aimed at form. At the moment, I don't have any plans to change how it currently works.
Okay. And any plans to be able to search the friendly URLs just in the friendly URL section? So this would be an area where when we're looking at the tables and the sortiness of the tables and the filteriness of the tables, that's where we're going to start looking at bringing in the friendly URL. It won't be a search, it'd be a filter, but I think it would do the same thing that you're after. They are searchable within the universe search. There's vote for the old functionality for the friendly URL search. It'll be similar to what we had previously. Just rename it to a filter. Will time be added to the content scheduler in addition to the current date option? We hope to add time at some point. It's something that's being asked for frequently. We've got some technical challenges to overcome before we'll be able to offer that, and it's not something that's currently on our roadmap. But I'd love to be able to bring that as an option to you guys. Again, any of these items, I mean, we're looking at ways that you can kind of, I don't know, +1 feature requests. But for the moment, for these things, if you find one that you like and you put it through twice, I do collate all the duplications together, and that gives us an idea of the ones that are bigger and more popular within our user group as a whole, for when we get time on our roadmap to address kind of user feature requests. So please drop it in and I'll add another +1 to the relevant option. I'm losing where I am in the Q&A now. I don't think there's any more questions. Any that we haven't managed to get to, we can pick up outside of this if I have missed anything. Other than that, I believe that draws our session to a close. These are our email addresses on screen. We thank you for your time today. It's been great having you in here, and really enjoyed the chat. I hope I hand over to Andy Green and Paul to say their taras, but thank you very much, guys, and we'll look forward to seeing you in our sessions tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody.